I believe everyone should be seeing my screen now. So my presentation today is going to be kind of building a bit on what Terry and Tom talked about, specifically working with Definiti to help keep your plan information secure. So what do we mean by secure? Typically what that means is we are talking about data. And we can break down data into a couple of broad categories. The most important one that we deal with is what's known as personally identifiable information, or PII. That's information that can be used to directly or indirectly identify a person. When this information gets compromised, you have potential consequences, sometimes legal, depending on how it was breached or taken. So it's very important that you keep this information secured, both when you have it and when you're sending it to other people. And real quick, we're going to talk about what direct PII is. That's information that can be immediately used to identify a person. So things like name, social security number, address, phone number, things that are unique to a person. We also have what's known as indirect, which is any other information that when combined together can be used to identify a person. So if I have somebody's date of birth, the name of their employer, their compensation amount, I can use those things, stitch them together, and identify who that person is, which makes that personally identifiable once you combine them. Another category of data that is important is confidential information. This is stuff that is less severe than the personally identifiable information if it gets breached, but it's still vital to your business and still causes harm if it's leaked or stolen. This can be things that are, if it's out there, your competitors might gain an advantage over you, or it could harm your business's reputation, or it could just upset your employees. We obviously don't want to have all of your rank and file employees seeing a list of everyone's compensation, things like that. So, confidential information is still very important to keep it secure. It just has less legal implications than the PII does. And then the last main category of data is public data. And that's information that is intended to be used by anyone outside your business. So that could be public filings with the government that get published. It could be your own marketing materials, things of that nature. So public information, we generally want to make sure that it is secured so that it can't be replicated and somebody could imitate your information, but locking it down isn't as critical. So what we're going to talk about today is these top two categories, the personally identifiable information, PII, and the confidential information, because those are the types of information that you're going to be sending to us on a regular basis. And then we're also going to be sending back to you on a regular basis. So we want to make sure that we understand how that information is being secured. So that leads us into then what's known as the data chain. So the data chain starts with the sender's network. So you have some data, it lives on a disk. We call that data at rest. Anytime you're accessing it on a computer, it's known as data in use. And then the last piece is whenever you're actually sending the data, it's in transit. So these three pieces are the side of the chain that belongs to the sender. So whenever you are sending us an email, or if we're sending you an email, we're the sender, and our structure looks like this. The next piece of the data chain is the internet. We have to get the data to each other somehow, and the main way that we do that these days is the internet. And that's the data in transit element. So it's somewhere in the cloud being sent from email servers to email servers or on file servers across the internet. The last piece is the recipient's network, and you'll see that this looks pretty similar to the sender's network, except that it's, instead of sending data, receiving it. We have our data in use, we have our data at rest. It is important that everything on both sides of the chain be encrypted, and that's where Definiti spends money to make sure that your data, while it lives on our servers, is safe and people can't get to it. And you should also be making sure that while the data is on your servers, people can't get to it. But what do we do about this bit? The internet, the part that we don't really have a lot of control over. It's just out there hitting servers, and who knows what's going on with it. Well, that's where we investigated options, and we came up with ShareFile, also known as Citrix files. as a solution to address this middle section of the data chain. So let's break this down. We have the middle section here. And why did we choose ShareFile? Well, when we or you send files, they get sent over an encrypted upload. So the entire time that the file is in transit to Citrix, that chain is encrypted. Additionally, while it's at Citrix, it's encrypted on their servers. And lastly, while you're downloading them, it's an encrypted download. So we're keeping all three pieces encrypted. So let's talk about what encryption is. Essentially, it is the process of converting data from a readable or plain text format into an unreadable or ciphertext format using what's known as an encryption key. The ciphertext is going to be useless without the encryption key. As an example, this is what's known as I'm going to give you an example of a simple substitution encryption. If you were to steal this information from me, it wouldn't do you any good because you don't know what this means. However, if you knew the encryption key, which is that this was a +1 substitution, then you would reverse it by using a -1 substitution. So you take one away from each of these letters and you get the message, hello. It's essentially a secret decoder ring like a spy would use, but we're doing it on a substantially more complicated process to convert all of your data into random ones and zeros that don't make any sense unless you have the really long encryption key. So the encryption keys, the industry standard right now is 128-bit key. And I won't bore you with all the technical details of what's involved in that, but we are moving to double that across the industry to 256-bit. As various services and sites get updated, we're moving to 256-bit. But essentially, that just means that it's a much longer encryption key. So the procedure by which your real data, plain text data, is converted into ciphertext data is a much more complicated procedure. And the reason we're doing that, and these numbers here that I'm about to show you are going to be a little stunning, but right now, the time that it takes modern day computers to crack a 128-bit encryption is approximately 2.61 trillion years. Now, this is not taking into account advances in technology. Computers obviously get faster over time, so this number continues to go down rapidly as computers get faster. It's still a very large number, but as it's going down, we realize that it's important to continue improving security, which is why we're now switching to 256-bit, and that takes approximately 229 nonillion years. Now, nonillion is probably not a word that you've ever heard before, and it looks like this. That's a lot of zeros. And just to kind of put this number in a bit of perspective, they estimate that the age of the universe is around 14 billion years. This number right here, yeah, it's 16 septillion times longer than the estimated length of the entire universe so far. So this is 256-bit. It's pretty good security. It's going to take a long time for someone to crack it if they're trying to breach. So now that we kind of have talked about what data is, what the data chain is, and why encryption is important, we're going to talk about how to actually use the service that we're using, the ShareFile option, to get data to us. So the two main options are to click a link, which there's a couple ways that you can get the link. One is if you know that you need to send us a file, you can ask us, any one of our employees, and they can get you a link sent to you that you can click on to securely upload that confidential or PII information. The other option for clicking a link is Definiti email signatures. We've been rolling out updated email signatures that have a little lock icon in them. When you click on that lock, it will take you to our ShareFile page where you can then upload a file. And the advantage of having it in the email signature is that you get a lot of emails from us. So it should be pretty easy to find that. We're also working on getting it up on our website. So once we have it up on the website, you'll also have a static place that you can go to. Every time you go to the website, it's just there. You can click it and send a file. That would be the not the recommended way to get about it, because the other two options are more targeted, being delivered to the person you want it delivered to. But the Definiti website option would allow you to get a file. We'll figure out who it needs to get to. Just might add some processing time. The other main option outside of clicking a link is what's known as FTP. That's File Transfer Protocol. So there are software tools that can be installed on your computers or your servers that allow you to automate the process of getting files from something and then sending those files across the internet to ShareFile. So if you are currently using something like that, like if you have automated payroll processing, things of those nature, where you need to get files to us on a regular recurring basis and they're generated in some kind of an automatic way, contact us and we can work with you on getting that set up to use ShareFile as the go-between to get that data from you to us. Let's talk about the links. I just have some couple examples here. So the first example we have, this is my email signature. So when I say get a link, if you were to request one, I could send you an email. It would look like this, and you would have this little box right here. It just says click here to upload files. If you click on that, it'll take you to the ShareFile site, and you can upload the file. The other option, like I mentioned, is the send me files securely option, which is going to be embedded in most or all email signatures at Definiti before too long here. And that'll take you to the same place as this, but it won't be customized. So when you click on one of those links, you're going to get to a landing page. And the only reason I'm bringing this up is because this fun little box down here called Remember Me. We recommend you check that. That way you don't have to enter this information in every time you send a file to us. We do request that this information get filled out as a requirement to upload files, and that's for a couple of purposes. One is just to make it easier to audit files when they come in, so we know who sent them to us. If stuff comes in anonymously, then we have to treat it with more suspicion and it takes more time to process. The other reason is just so that you then also get email notifications back whenever we've accessed the file that you've sent to us. So it works both ways. We have an audit trail knowing that you've sent us a file and we've been notified of it, and then you also can get notifications back letting you know that we have received your file and have downloaded it. We also, depending on the nature of the files going on, we can also set it up so that you will have an actual ShareFile account that you would have a username and password for, as opposed to just having to provide information. We use that in certain cases where there's the FTP automation going on. You'll probably wind up having to have an account set up, but that's once it's set up and configured, it just runs. All right, so once you get through this, the other thing I wanted to talk about was when you're uploading files, you can either drag them in from your computer. You can click on the Browse Files button to get a file explorer and go navigate for them. But the important thing to remember is that after you've put files in here, it'll just as many files as you want. You can drag them in here and it'll keep building the list. You want to make sure you hit the upload button because if you just close the tab, it won't send any files to us. So make sure you hit that upload button. All right. Okay, so that's sending files to us. That's kind of what it looks like when you are trying to send files to us, clicking those links. The other end, though, is we use ShareFile to send files to you. And so what's that going to look like? It's mostly going to be an email. You're going to get an email from us. It's going to have a little section like this that says Citrix attachments or ShareFile. It will have a download attachment button, which you can click on to launch the website. It will also have this HTML attachment, which does the same thing as clicking the button. For some users, for your email system, the attachment will work better than the button. That's why it sends both. Once you click on either of these, you're going to get a very similar looking page where you're going to input information about who you are, check the box, and then that'll take you into the website where you then can retrieve the files. There's a download button at the top. There's also a download button or a print button here. The download button at the top is useful for downloading multiple files at a time, whereas this download button, the lower one, is going to pull down a single file at a time, print a single file at a time. So if we uploaded a bunch of things, you can collectively download them. So that's the new way that we are using to send and receive secure information. And this is kind of on a ad hoc basis as opposed to our regular ongoing data collection process that you might be familiar with. At the end of every year, we collect the census data and the questionnaires. That kind of information will still continue to be collected through the myretirementaccounts.com site, which Christine will be going over on our upcoming presentation right after mine. So that website won't be changing, but this new thing allows more easy access to sending and receiving files to Definiti, while keeping the data incredibly secure. And that was the main reason we went out and selected ShareFile, was because of ease of use while also having incredibly strong security. All right, and then I think we are now ready for questions.
I have a question, Philip.
Yes.
So you talked about the kind of information that includes personally identifying, right? But could you go one step further? We're going to talk about census, but I suspect there's other kind of information that everybody may want to consider using the Citrix file. So maybe detail it a little bit. Give us an example of what kind of stuff they should be sending to Definiti for securely.
Yeah. So, like I said, obviously the direct PII, you always want to send secure. That's an always type deal. But even when you start getting into, let's say you are filling out distribution paperwork for participants, that's always going to contain some kind of PII on it, both direct and indirect. There's certain types of part of our annual data collection. There's some things going on in there. Even just draft data. Let's say you're looking to get projections done, and you're sending compensation estimates, and it's just a file with comp numbers on it. That kind of information isn't necessarily going to damage your business if it gets out, but it could make your employees unhappy if one of them gets a hold of that, and it comes through and they see, and they say, oh, here I am, I'm lower down the list than I thought I was in terms of total comp. That's never a good thing to have happen. So having your information, there's the legal stuff with the PII, and then there's the business impact stuff with things that you want to keep confidential, that you don't have a legal obligation to do so, but you have a business reason to keep it confidential.
Yeah. So maybe when in doubt, use Citrix. Use the file.
Yeah, in general, it just makes sense that if you're sending files, it just makes sense to send it via ShareFile. That way you don't have to worry about whether something in it should have been confidential or encrypted. It just will be. And realistically, the amount of time it takes to upload a file on ShareFile is the same amount of time as it takes to attach a file to an email. You instead of just dragging and dropping in the email and hitting send, you just drag and drop into the ShareFile window and hit upload. So, it from a time saving standpoint, it's the same as sending an email back and forth. But sending it via a secured method keeps your information from being exposed.
Right, and that's what this whole day is about: is keeping data safe, both in on your systems and in transit, and how we keep it safe too. Thank you, Philip.
So I do see a question has come in.
Yeah,
I'll answer this live. So we have a question that says, the firm already uses ShareFile. Can we initiate the encryption, expiration of file transfer, access credentials, et cetera, or does Definiti prefer responding to a Definiti link to upload? So yeah, if your firm is already using ShareFile, feel free to send us files using your ShareFile. We'll probably send files back to you using our ShareFile, just because that's what's been integrated into our Outlook. And obviously, when you're sending us files, it's integrated into your Outlook, so it makes it easier for you over there as well. And that's fine. Our users are being trained on what to look for on links. So whenever we get a link, we're working on making sure that everyone knows how to check for phishing. So we'll be able to look at the link and see that, yes, this is a legitimate ShareFile link. We can click on it and pull it down. So yes, that's a good question. Yes, if you've already got it, go for it. Let's see, I had, let's see, there was another question that I thought I saw come through. There's a question about faxes. That's a good question. So faxing, is faxing secure? The short answer is no. There are a lot of digital fax options out there now. and large sections of the fax transmission process can be encrypted. But the problem is that no matter how you send it or who you send it to, at some point in time, your fax transmission is going to leave an encrypted environment and it's going to hit a phone line. And that part where it's on the phone line, it's being transmitted in an unencrypted format. Now, granted, most people are probably not sitting out, most hackers are not sitting out there throwing a line over top of the phone line in order to intercept everything. But if they know that you are engaged in financial activity, then they could be targeting you, in which case they would do something like that. So fax transmissions should never be considered secure. And I know that there are some requirements that things be faxed. Some entities still work exclusively in the fax world. If you can send the items to those companies in another format, you should. Obviously, we accept faxes here because we know that sometimes people are working in an environment where that's the only method that they have to send data. But our strong recommendation is to send everything via an encrypted format like ShareFile, not through fax, and to use fax only as an absolute last resort. It should not be your go-to. All right, do we have any other questions? Let's see, well, there was one about files with passwords. Okay, so you could put a password on a file. I know Microsoft Office allows you to add passwords to your files. Adobe can allow you to add passwords to your files, both for opening and editing the files. And some other programs do as well. So adding a password to a file is more about user access than it is about data protection. And the reason I say that is because I can go on the internet in the next 10 minutes, download a program that I can put your password protected file into, and it will remove that password without me having to do anything. So it is, password protecting files is about keeping people inside your environment, trustworthy people inside your environment, from opening things they're not supposed to. It really doesn't help prevent somebody who's stolen your files from getting into those files. Because while there is technically a degree of encryption involved, because it's file level encryption in that file, it's very easy to crack it out and break it, because the password to open it has to be stored inside that file. And so it's just it's a very simplistic matter to write code that will pull that password out, unhash it, and use it. So yeah, password protecting, like I said, is useful for user access with people you trust to not try to hack it. So yeah, again, encryption is the correct choice for keeping your data out of the hands of people who shouldn't have it.